Job was a very, very ancient person. And you get to the last chapter of Job, and you find out how old he was when he died, 140 years of age. That puts that kind of lifespan back in those ancient patriarchal times. So it is my belief that Job was a contemporary or lived during the time of Abraham. And if I was in a class and my professor made me give a date to it, I would place it between Genesis 11 and Genesis 12. After the Tower of Babel, before Abraham enters the land of Canaan. That's where I would place it. And I'm bringing that background up for this reason. It's a book about suffering. It's one of the oldest books in the Bible. It goes to show you that people have been suffering a long time. Since time immemorial, people have gone through trials and struggles and heartache and hardship and pain. It goes all the way back to the earliest records. Verse 1. There was a man, stop there. This is a book about a real man. It is not an allegory. It is not a parable. It's about a real person with a real life who had real suffering. Job will be mentioned in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 14. And the mention of it is with two other historical figures, Noah and Daniel. And God is announcing through the prophet Ezekiel that he is going to bring judgment. And he said, even if Noah, Daniel, and Job were alive in this land, only they would be delivered because of their righteousness. Everybody else would go into captivity. So because you have two other historical persons, Noah, Daniel, along with Job, that also lends credibility to this being not a parable, not an allegory, but a real person. There was a man. Then you get to the book of James, and James says, you have heard of the perseverance or the patience of Job. And you have seen the end, how the Lord is merciful and compassionate, and how God blessed him more at the end than at the beginning. So it's a real book about a real person. And there are specific names that are in this book. Names of people, names of places. You don't get that when you deal with parables and allegories. So there was a man in the land of Uz. And of course, he's related to a wizard who lived, the Wizard of Uz. No, that didn't happen. But the land of Uz is an ancient name. It's an ancient name for Edom. The Edomites lived there. What is south of the Dead Sea, southeast of the Dead Sea. And there's a picture behind me. This is kind of the area that he lived in. It is the area of modern-day Jordan, southern Jordan, northern Arabia. Very stark. You think it's stark around these parts. That makes the moon look lush. I mean, it's just barren, rocky wilderness, although there are oases during that, and there's high country, and it is my belief that Job didn't live out in these desert regions, but up in those oases in the higher regions. There was a man in the land of Uz, whose name was Job. And that man, listen to the description. Anybody would love this as a description of his or her life. Blameless and upright, one who feared God and hated or shunned evil. When it says he was blameless, it does not mean that he was perfectly sinless. It means he was morally upright. When it says he is upright, it's a word that means to go straight ahead and not veer off the path. That's what the word designates. To walk straight ahead and not veer off the path. In other words, a man of integrity. He walked the straight and narrow, we would say. He's an upright man. He feared God. That is, he respected God. He worshiped God. He loved God. And his fear was doing something to displease the Lord. So he feared God and he hated evil. It's setting him up. This verse is very descriptive and very necessary for what follows, because you would not expect normally a person this awesome to go through this kind of suffering. But that's who he was. And verse 2, 7 sons and 3 daughters were born to him. So he had 10 kids. Big household. My mother lived in a household where there were 9 of them. She had 7 brothers as well, but just 1 sister. So crazy kind of an upbringing, people sleeping on top of one another, but different situation here. 7 sons, 3 daughters were born to him. Also, his possessions were 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and a very large household. So he had servants like Abraham did. So that this man was the greatest of all the people in the East. The word greatest, and some of you who know Hebrew, like Matt, who remember this word, the word is gadol. Gadol. When it says he's the greatest, gadol, which means large. He was the largest man in the East. And that doesn't mean he was overweight. It just means he was significant and very, very well-to-do. So he was the greatest of all the people. Think of an Arabian sheikh. Somebody who had great power, was over lots of people, and was well known. So he's the greatest or the heaviest. He's a heavyweight back in those days of the people of the East. Now, his sons would go and feast in their houses, each on his appointed day, and would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. I think this is kind of cool. You know, the boys traded off having the party at their house. And so the sisters wouldn't have to bother on the feast day. You know, you all invited to our house. So these 7 guys, these 7 sons traded off having the festive meal. We don't know if it was a daily celebration or it was like a yearly celebration, like birthday celebration. But they traded off having the feast at the 7 boys' homes. And the sisters would come and eat and drink with them. So it was, when the days of feasting had run their course, that Job would send and sanctify them. And he would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, "It may be that my sons have sinned and have cursed God in their hearts." Thus Job did regularly. Let me suggest that you do this for your children. Job had adult children. They grew up. He knew they liked to party. And so he goes to prayer for them every day, that God would keep them, that God would forgive them. Some of you have children you're just not quite sure about. They've grown up, you know, your influence in their lives isn't what it used to be. Get up in the morning, pray for them. It's one of the best things you could do. Now, I'm not suggesting you go kill a goat and have a burnt offering like Job did, but that's another reason that we think it's in the patriarchal period, because obviously there is no priesthood in Israel because there's no nation of Israel. So this is the ancient practice of the husband, the father, being the priest of his own home. So like the tribal leader, he's taking animals, sacrificing them, having the fear of God, praying for his children. So you get a picture of this man. He is very wealthy, he's very renowned, and yet he is very godly. Large family, very godly. Very wealthy, very godly. And it is going to be, he's serving the Lord. And you might think, well, anybody that has that, that kind of loot and God has blessed him is going to be serving the Lord. And that is going to be Satan's whole spiel, his whole contention, is that's the reason Job is following you, because he is the greatest man in all the East. You have made him that way. But I find it interesting. I find it fascinating that in verse 5, the reason, the motivation behind this daily getting up and sacrificing for his sons is he has this hunch. For Job said, it may be that my sons have cursed God in their hearts and sinned. Now, why on earth would Job think that? Well, wait till chapter 2 and you meet Mrs. Job. Because Mrs. Job suggests to her husband what? Curse God and die. Could it be that the influence of this woman in the children's life was enough that Job said, I got to offset that? She has a propensity to blame a lot of things on God, and that's not a good role model in this house. So I'm going to get up and counteract that and go to prayer for these kids and sacrifice for them, because maybe they have cursed God in their hearts. Thus, Job did regularly. Now, there was a day, and this now sets up the behind the scenes, behind the stage goings on of the book. There was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. Of course, Job does not know any of this, right? We have the book of Job. Job will wish he had the book of Job. He doesn't have that resource. We have it. We can look and we can acknowledge and we can study and we can break it down. Oh, that's why this is happening. He didn't have that. It just happened to him. And he has to figure out with his friends, why is this happening? So there was a day when the sons of God, and that is a phrase that almost always refers to the angels of God. Genesis chapter 6 uses that phrase. Job chapter 42 uses the phrase, the sons of God, as being a synonym for the angels of God at creation. So there came a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. The name Satan isn't really a name, it's a title. It means adversary. I believe his name was originally Lucifer. We call him the devil. Satan means adversary. This is the first time in Scripture that this official title is used for him, is Job chapter 1. So there came a day, the angels of God, the sons of God, come to give an account, and Satan also came among them. Did you know that Satan is not in hell? Contrary to popular opinion, Satan is not in hell. He has never been in hell. Now, he'll go there one day. That is his ultimate end. And when he goes there, he's not going to be the head of it, the chief of it. He's going to be the chief victim of it. Hell is prepared, Jesus said, for the devil and his angels. But he is not in hell. That's fact number one that we find out about. He's not in hell. He has access to God. He has access to God. He is, wherever this took place in the heavenlies, even though he's been kicked out of heaven, he has temporary visiting rights, you might say, to give an account, which is an important second fact. He is accountable to God. Satan is on a leash. It's longer than I would like. I sometimes wonder why it's not shorter. I have an idea why, I have reasons for it, but now is not the time. but he is accountable to God. That is, Satan does operate in the earth, but he operates within the parameters of God's will. He can't just do what he wants willy-nilly without God allowing him to go so far. Again, I don't know why the leash is as long as it is, but he has to get permission. In the New Testament, you remember the demons asked Jesus, permit us to go into that herd of swine. He had to give them permission to do that. So Satan operates within the parameters of God's will. So Satan is here, accountable to God. Satan's among them. And the Lord said to Satan, from where do you come? So Satan answered the Lord and said, hiss. I just did that for effect. From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it. Where you been, Satan? Oh, cruising Central. Just going around the earth. Now we know what he is doing. Peter said, your adversary, the devil, roams around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. That's what he's doing. Cruising the earth, looking for prey. And the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil? Now, here it is as a question. It is best rendered as a rhetorical question. In other words, you have been considering my servant Job, haven't you? This brings us to point number 3 about Satan. He studies people. He considers them. He notices things about them. He understands our propensities, our weak points. Listen, he's been doing this a long time. Before you were even, and I were even here, for thousands of years, Satan has understood humanity and human nature. And he understands our vulnerable points. He studies us. It's an eerie kind of a thought, but it's a true thought. Have you ever been in a restaurant or in a store and you just get this weird feeling? And then you turn and you notice there's some dude over there, some gal staring at you. So, it's like their eyes were locking in on you this whole time and you just noticed it. Creepy feeling, right? Eerie feeling. You've been considering my servant Job, haven't you? Have you considered him? You know what this guy's blameless. He's upright. He fears God. He shuns evil. In the New Testament, in Luke chapter 22, Jesus and Peter are having a conversation. And it is at the hour of Jesus' greatest trial in the upper room. And Jesus says, Peter,
order submitted.
Or Simon, he uses the old name, Simon, Satan has been asking about you. He wants to sift you like wheat, but I prayed for you. And when you are returned, strengthen your brethren. Well, thanks for the prayers, but wow, what a revelation. Satan's been asking for me by name. Yeah, he's been asking about you, but I prayed for you. So Satan studies us. He's not in hell. He has access to heaven. He's accountable to God. He studies mankind. And so Satan answered the Lord, verse 9, and he said, does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the works of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. Now that brings up another characteristic about Satan. he accuses people. He studies us, he finds our weak points, he brings it up before God. He is called the accuser of the brethren, who accuses us before God night and day. You might recall, if not, just jot this down and look at it later, but in Zechariah chapter 3, almost at the very end of the Old Testament, Zechariah chapter 3, Zechariah, as you know, is a series of visions the prophet gets. In the 3rd chapter, he gets a vision of Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord and Satan standing at his right hand to accuse him, to oppose him. So that's one of his dirty little tricks. He accuses you before God. And I'm guessing you've heard some of those accusations. You call yourself a Christian. Look at you, right? You've heard those little voices that cause guilt and shame and distance. And you know, Satan is such a creep about it. He entices you. He tells you, oh, go ahead, do that. You'll enjoy that. Nobody will care. It's okay. And then as soon as you do it, he comes and says, I can't believe you did that. And the guilt is piled on. You call yourself a Christian. All those accusations, you've experienced it. He said, look, you've made a hedge about him and his household and all that he has on every side. You've protected him. You've blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. Stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. So the Lord said to Satan, behold, all that he has is in your power. Only do not lay a hand on his person. Then Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. What is the accusation? The accusation is this: God, the only reason Job serves you is because you bought him off. He serves you because he's a mercenary. You give him so much, you bless him so much. Take that stuff away, he won't love you. And so here's the challenge. Can God be loved and worshiped for who he is alone? Or must it always include for what he does and what he gives? What if God strips away the favor and the blessing and he still is who he is? Can God be worshiped then? So in this is a challenge. This is like the divine, epic story of all stories. The gauntlet gets thrown down. The challenge is on. Of course, Job doesn't know this. It'd be helpful if Job had the book of Job, but he doesn't have it. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Now there was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. Okay, there's a series of 4 tragedies that will occur. Here's the first. And a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing, the donkeys feeding beside them. And when the Sabians are people that live in Sheba. You remember the queen of Sheba? This is Arabia, northern Arabia. The Sabians, a marauding band of nomads, raided them and took them away. And indeed, they have killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was speaking, another also came and said, the fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Stop there. This servant says to Job, it's the fire of what? God, right? Probably referring to a lightning strike that caused a wildfire that burned this up. Fire of God. Actually, who sent the fire? Satan. Yes, God gave, go ahead. Challenge is on, but don't touch his person. So the second tragedy that happens
Order filled.
Is a lightning strike, fire from heaven that the servant mistakenly calls, this is God's fault. You know, it always has bothered me a little bit when I read some of these insurance contracts and it talks about acts of God. You're not insured in case there's an act of God. What about acts of Satan? Look around the world at all the tragedy that happened. Don't call it an act of God. Satan is the prince of this world. I alone have escaped to tell you. Verse 17, while he was still speaking, another also came and said, the Chaldeans, another from Mesopotamia now, another band of marauding nomads, the Chaldeans formed 3 bands, raided the camels, and took them away. So your camels are gone. And I don't think Job would walk a mile for a camel. Now, some of you got that joke, right? How many of you got that joke? Raise your hand. Okay, these are the old people of our congregation. That's an old commercial. You know, I can't resist some of these. It's a perfect setup. So the camels are gone. He has to go to Marlborough now with the edge of the sword. I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another also came and said, your sons and daughters were eating and drinking in their oldest brother's house, and suddenly a great wind came from across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house,
Order filled. Stop filled. Order filled. Stop filled.
you.